Yeah. So good morning, everyone. So my name is Damien Weidman. I work for a small enterprise called Mirico Limited, and I also work for a UK national lab called the Rutherford Appleton Lab. I am also coordinating the work package on instrument development within the Science for Clean Energy project. And it's my great pleasure to introduce the meeting and to welcome you all today at the Geological Society, very topical venue, and to welcome you to this one-day forum on the S4CE project. So just a word on the S4CE project. This is a large project. We have about 26 partners in the consortium. And it has already reached about two-thirds of its lifetime. Actually, it has passed two-thirds of its lifetime. So we have already some great results within the project, and one of the objectives of today is to start sharing this and disseminating this to a wider community. But also, most importantly, is to have a very diverse audience and a very diverse lineup of speakers to start discussing about the wider remits of the project, to start to engage with a wider community within geoenergy, and to really make the most of the legacy of the project and possibly also to talk about the future of it. So it's therefore timely to organize this forum, and that's why we did it. And we have today a very good lineup of speakers, as you may have seen within the agenda. I really acknowledge them for giving their time for today. And also we have a very interesting audience, very diverse. We have students, we have scholars and experts in earth science and geoenergy. We have industry, small and large, and we also have members of regulatory and policy-making bodies. So it's a very interesting audience, and please make the most of the day by discussing with various people and sharing among these different interested parties in the S4CE project. So with this, I think now it's time to introduce a bit the project through a video. So once again, a very warm welcome to you all. Please make the most of the day and enjoy the day as well. And for the video, how does that? Okay.
Modern life is energy intensive. Energy comes from the earth, traditionally in the form of fossil fuels like coal and oil. But burning fossil fuels is damaging our planet. The release of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere is causing climate change, the effects of which are felt around the world. Our expanding society needs energy to function, but the planet is struggling to keep up with demand. The key is reducing the human energy footprint and harnessing alternative energy sources. Geothermal energy harnesses heat generated below the surface by hot rocks. Natural gas trapped within shale rock is one of the cleanest fossil fuels. The gas can be cleaned to remove harmful compounds. Thanks to technological developments, subsurface rocks can also store carbon dioxide from energy production, preventing it from going into the atmosphere. But digging deep into the planet is hard work, not to mention dangerous. But without taking the risk, we have no energy. This is why the EU-funded project Science for Clean Energy exists. With 23 partner organisations and an international network of scientists, we bring together expertise and technology. Our team is developing tools to monitor geoenergy operations and mitigate risks. At the surface, we monitor gas emissions to the atmosphere. Water is one of our most precious resources. We monitor leaks to the water table to protect groundwater for future generations. Below the surface, we monitor potentially damaging seismic activity. Without risk, we're without energy. But by developing and sharing best practice with industry and policymakers, Science for Clean Energy is facilitating clean energy for a more sustainable future.
Okay, just a word about this video, just to mention that it's something that has been initiated and organized by the students in early career, which are involved, early career scientists, which are involved in the project. So that's really their doing. Now, to give you an overview of the project, I would like to invite Alberto Striolo, which is coordinator of the project, to give an overview and present the overall science background.
Thank you, Damien. I would like to start by thanking everybody for being here. It's an honor to be in front of you, but we really appreciate you taking the time to come and discuss with us. I would also like to start by thanking the people who put the organization together, so Colleen, Eugenia, and Natalie, who's no longer with us, but she's in a different project now. They are truly amazing, and they put everything together, so thank you very much. It has been an honor working with you. All right, so Damien gave a bit of an overview, and the movie certainly helped explaining what is that we are trying to do within the science for clean energy. So I'll try to to put everything in perspective. So many partners, but at the core of the S4CE are a number of field sites. And they're listed in this cartoon over here. So you see that there are different rocks, different formations, different operations. Some of these formations are going to be good for storing CO2 for the long term. Some others could be good for producing geothermal energy. Some of these field sites, the one in Italy, for example, is essential for treating hydrocarbons for using it every day. The choice of the field sites has allowed us to have field sites at different ranges in their operations. Some are at the exploratory stage. Some are being drilled as we speak. Some are mature, and they are doing very well at the moment. And some are at the end of their operation lifetime. So having access to all of these differences allows the consortium to get a better understanding of what are the possible things that can be done in the various locations. From the point of view of S4CE, these geothermal subsurface geoenergy operations represents the opportunities. As the movie suggested, there could be opportunities to produce energy, for example. But as the movie told us, without risk, there is no energy. So we do recognize that there are a number of risks that are associated with all these operations and any other operation that has to do with energy. And the risks that the consortium is concerned about are listed in this slide over here. We do recognize that it is our role as a consortium to quantify these risks, to monitor these risks, to come up with the technologies that can mitigate these risks, and when possible, to actually counterbalance them. And we are working together with legislators and companies to figure out what are the best practices to achieve a sustainable operation. This is essential because we do need to operate in an environment where there is the public, and we need to achieve a social license to operate, without which this sort of operations will simply not take place. So what is the philosophy of the S4CE consortium? That is listed in this cartoon over here. Essentially, what we want to do is to do a risk mitigation using fundamental research. At the core of the consortium, there is fundamental research. Anything that we can do at the cutting edge to figure out what are the mechanisms, the phenomena that take place when the various subsurface geoenergy operations take place. That's what we study among the various academics, institutions that are involved with the project. Then what we do is use this understanding to come up with new technologies to monitor the risks, to reduce the risks. And then the idea will be to combine the fundamental understanding and these new technologies to reduce the risk of the operation for the long term. In short, this is what the consortium tries to do. What I want to do in the next few minutes is to give you an example to bring to light the contribution of the various partners. I will start by one of the field sites, the one in Cornwall. We will learn more about the field sites in a few minutes, so I will not spoil it. But this is a deep geothermal site. There are 2 wells. It has one big record. The deepest of the two wells is now the deepest onshore well in the UK, so we are very proud of being associated with this activity. Lucy will tell us a little more about it. On this side over here, we highlight a little bit of a seismic network that is in place to monitor how that site will respond when the operations will start. So we recognize that there are risks. These are the opportunity to produce electricity. One of the risks that are associated with it is the possibility of generating seismic events. The consortium is implementing various technologies to interpret the seismic events. Over here, I list 3 of them, implemented by 3 of our partners. QCON is interpreting seismic events at the surface to figure out what happens in the subsurface. Our colleagues in Salerno and Naples are developing techniques to also understand what could be the risk associated with the subsurface geoenergy operations. And in Germany, another company, Geomecon, is figuring out how the risk of seismic events can be triggered by injecting fluids in the subsurface. The idea here is to be able to understand what is happening in the subsurface in the various geologic formations so that we can operate the field sites, minimizing the risks. In this cartoon, I summarize a number of technologies that we are developing with the consortium. So Damien is a representative of Mirico. Mirico is developing technologies to monitor and detect leaks in the atmosphere. So they have, this is just a small little operation, a small little image. They're able to put a sensor in the surface, and they're able to detect leaks of both methane and CO2. Imperial College and the University of Eastern Finland are developing technologies to monitor potential leaks inside of the cements and how the cements crack as a function of time. TWI, it's a company in Cambridge, they are developing technologies to monitor the integrity of the casings while the wells are being operated. Helixa, it's a startup company based in Switzerland. They are developing DNA-based technologies to monitor the fluid transport in the subsurface. At UCL, our colleagues in Earth Sciences are developing technologies to figure out how much gas and fluids can be stored in various rock samples. And in Lyon, and other institutions in France, our colleagues are developing technologies to test whether there are microbial life in the various formations. And this instrument over here, it's called Push 50. The trick here is that we want to store that microbial life and to keep it at high pressure so that we can actually study it in the laboratory. Speaking of fluids and rocks, this is a little bit of a summary of a multi-scale type of analysis that are being conducted within the consortium. These days, drones are attracting a lot of attention. So here is an image of a geologic formation in Iceland that is mapped using drones. So essentially, we are looking at a multi-kilometers type of surface area to figure out what are the properties of a geologic formation. Then we can have access to the rocks, and we can measure their mechanical properties to figure out how they will respond to stimulation. Our colleagues in Earth Sciences are Pedram is here, and others are here as well. They are trying to figure out how these rocks change their properties when they are exposed to acids, for example, over a period of time. At Imperial College, Ronnie and his collaborators are measuring how much gas can be stored in these rocks as a function of pressure and temperature at conditions that are representative of the subsurface. And our colleagues at UCL are figuring out what is the pore distribution inside of the various rock formations. So here what you see is that we go all the way from kilometer length scales down to the nanometer length scale to figure out how the properties of these rocks behave. Please let me indulge a little bit in this cartoon over here because it represents some of the research that is done in my group. Here we are trying to figure out how the fluid behave when they are inside of a small little rock samples. There's also a contribution from France, Armin, as well as SCM, which is a small company in the Netherlands. So we start by studying the fluids inside of a single pore, nanometer length scale. Then what we are doing is to try to figure out how these fluids move in a few of these rocks, and Anne is a postdoc, and she will be able to give you more details about this. And then we use this information to inform larger scale calculations, and Anne is our expert in fluid dynamics, and is using this type of information to predict the permeability in rock samples that we can compare to experiments, and we are happy to report that we have very good reproduction of experiments. And then we are now exploring how we can improve this. We can use this improved understanding to predict how various samples, how various tracers, for example, distribute in the environment. Fluids, okay, we need to provide recommendations on how to reduce risks. So our colleagues in Naples are coming up with best practice recommendations to reduce the risk of water contamination. The recommendations tend to be in line with best practice recommendations in the industry, but they are applied to the various locations that are part of the consortium. That way, we know that when we operate, we try to operate in the best, safest possible way. And finally, we need to also talk with the European Commission. Thanks for your support. And one of the things that we are asked to do is to provide recommendations on what are the best practices. So here is work by Andrea at UCL, together with his supervisor, Paola. What they're doing is applying a life cycle assessment analysis so that they can predict what are the possible environmental contaminations of the various formations. So for example, in this cartoon here, in red are the possible environmental contaminations due to producing 1 kilowatts of electricity in the geothermal operation in Cornwall. And what they did, they compared that possible environmental contamination to the expected contaminations due to produce the same amount of energy, but by a number of other sources, for example, natural gas, solar energy, wind energy, or nuclear energy. And what we see is that depending on the environmental impact, different sources of energy will have the lowest impact onto the environment. With this is the information that we provide to the European Commission, and then governments, legislators will decide how to best organize the energy portfolio to support the energy for a given country. With this, I conclude my little overview to discuss the legacy. As mentioned, we are already in the last year of the consortium, so we are beginning to synthesize and to figure out what is it we are leaving behind. We have set up repositories of rocks and data, and of course a large number of papers for people to follow and to continue improving on our science. We have a large number of international collaborations. So we are, for example, very grateful today for people that came from North America, from Canada, and also from the rest of Europe to give us overviews on what are the best practices, what are the outcomes from their consortia. Thank you very much. I've already discussed some of the technologies that we are bringing to life within the consortium, and also a significant effort within the consortium has been to come up with a number of outreach and educational activities. We start from pre-university students with outreach events. We have activities at the postgraduate level, and with this I would like to thank all the global management and natural resources students that are here in the audience. If you don't mind standing up for just a second. Please stand up. Thank you very much. Now everybody knows who you are. Make the best out of this meeting. All of you are looking for jobs in the resources sector, and the future is on you. So good luck, and thanks a lot. And then we conclude with a number of activities that are focused on the early stage researchers that we want to support for their continuation of their careers. With this, I finish. I'm not sure if there is time for answering any question, but if there is, I'll be happy to take them. Thank you, and have a great day.
Okay, thank you, Alberto. So now it's our keynote speaker. So we are going to invite, I hope I will get it right, Vassilios Kougionas from the European Commission. And please, He's going to talk about clean energy transition in the EU. Thank you.
So thank you very much for this invitation, and I'm very happy to be here with such an audience. So today I'm going to give you an update of where we are with the clean energy transition, with respect also to CCUS. So this is going to be an EU perspective. So these are our targets that we have set last year for climate and energy. These are well-known targets for 2030, since we aim to reduce CO2 emission, greenhouse gas emissions by 40%, and increasing the shares of renewables by 32%, and the energy efficiency by 32.5%. But of course, our long-term ambition is to reach to 80 to 95% by 2050. But as you know, we will have a new commission taking place soon. Of course, we still have not yet finalized, but we expect the new commission will start soon. But our new president-elect has announced, as you may know, the European Green Deal, which is a very ambitious program in which we aim to become the world's first climate-neutral continent. And to achieve this, several measures need to be taken. That's what our president has announced in the first 100 days taking place in the Commission. So the first has announced the European Climate Law for 2050 climate neutrality target to achieve this. Then we aim to be more ambitious for the 2030. I have already set the 40% targets we have set, but now maybe we'll move to 50 or 55% greenhouse gas emission reductions. So this is very ambitious. Then, as you know, our main target instrument for the carbon prices is the ETS, the European Trading Scheme, which at the moment doesn't cover maritime or also the airlines. But then our future target is to cover maritime, but also traffic and construction, and also to limit the free allowances allocated to airlines. Then also we need to introduce, in order to achieve these targets, a carbon border tax to avoid the carbon leakage. And our aim to become is a global leader in the circular economy and clean technologies. And in order to do that, we need to decarbonize the energy-intensive industries, for instance, steel and cement. And in order to do all that, of course, for what happens and what is relevant to my DG, is we need to invest record amounts in cutting-edge research and innovation. Also, international collaboration it's very important because we aim to increase our ambition in order to achieve our targets for 2050, and also to bring the emissions to the ambition to the other emitters by 2021. This is very much linked with energy, because our energy goal is, as I said, to become carbon neutral by 2050, and to remain within 1.5 degrees C to achieve our climate neutrality is very important. So our estimation says that in order to achieve this, we will need to have CCUS in our portfolio. Of course, first of all, we will need renewable energy, and this will be our priority. For instance, as in this project, geothermal energy. But with the remaining fossil fuels, we need to do something, because in some energy-intensive industries, we cannot do otherwise by employing CCUS. And also with the remaining fossil fuel power plants, we need to employ CCUS. And this can be done with CCUS, but also with clean hydrogen and CCUS. Also the remaining fossil fuel power plants, because we will the share of renewable energy in the energy grid will continuously increase, And then and as you know, the existing power plants provide the base load for electricity. So this need to be highly flexible to balance these fluctuating renewables. And for deep electrification, we need to have a sector coupling between the different sectors of energy, for example, transport and industry. And this can, for example, hydrogen can provide the link between the different sectors. So the Green Planet for All, the Green Deal, actually it's a continuation of the Green Planet for All. And that was announced last year, was a communication on the European strategic long-term vision for a prosperous, modern, competitive, climate-neutral economy. This is in line with our vision for 2050 and is very much relevant to the Paris Agreement objective, because we want to keep the temperature increase to below 2 degrees C, but also to pursue efforts to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees C. And also it's in line with the IPCC report, which has confirmed that if we don't limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees C, this will have a very worst impact to the world. So the EU needs to lead the world in climate change and limit the greenhouse gas emissions, as I said, to zero by 2050. By doing this, the EU can inform the others how to achieve these targets, and this is possible to achieve a clean planet, and also shown that we can transform our economy. And this can be both possible and beneficial for the environment. So this long-term strategy has 7 building blocks. It covers energy efficiency, renewables, clean, safe, and connected mobility. And also, as I mentioned before, competitive industry and circular economy. Infrastructure is important, and also bioeconomy and natural carbon sinks. And finally, to tackle, as I mentioned before, the remaining emissions with carbon capture and storage. So I'm going to say a few words about the 7th building block, the CCUS, in which the rapid deployment of renewable energies in the last few years has reduced, apparently, the need to employ CCUS. But with the new measures, and especially with the Green Deal, CCS has, we believe, has a crucial role to play to close the circle in the net zero economy. And this is because the energy-intensive industries, such as cement and steel, will require it because no other alternatives exist. And also, if CCS is combined with biomass, it can create negative emissions. But as we all know, in CCUS in Europe is facing barriers. We still lack of the demonstration in the EU, and also the proof of economic viability. There are some regulatory barriers, and there is public opposition. And this is very much relevant to this project, Science for Energy, for clean energy, because this will will assure the public that the risks, if there are any risks, they can be managed safely. So we need to provide in the EU an enabling framework to spur large-scale demonstration and scale up private investments to provide the right signals to the markets, and also we need to reassure the public opinion. We've seen already some demonstrations taking place in Europe, which starting at least with the Northern Lights and the Portos projects in the Netherlands. So this is quite encouraging of the new projects going on. Then the first tool to implement this long strategy for the EU is what we call the Innovation Fund. This is the first tool to implement this and to drive low carbon technologies to the market. This was adopted in 2019, February. And this fund, if with today's carbon prices, can go up to 10 billion euros to cover four mainly technologies: renewable energy, CCUS, energy-intensive industries, and energy storage. The objectives of all these technologies is to drive low-carbon technologies to the market. Then there are synergies with this innovation fund with the other funds within the EU. For the research, we have the Horizon Europe, which is, at the moment, we are finalizing its procedures. Then within the Horizon Europe, we'll create some partnerships, public-private partnerships. On the demonstration, I mentioned the Innovation Fund, but also we need infrastructures, for instance, the Connecting Euro Facility, the Modernization Fund, and also the cohesion funding of member states. What we have said also in the EU under the Research and Innovation DG, we have set what we call the Strategic Energy Technology Plan for different energy technologies in order to achieve our 2030 and 2020 targets. Within its different technology, we have set implementation working groups, which in order to for different members of the group to commit funding to achieve our targets. So for CCUS, for instance, we have the implementation working group on CCUS. This is the set plan action 9. And we have collaboration of 11 member states, and actually is co-chaired by Netherlands and Norway. And from the industry is the Zero Emission platform that is co-chairing. Within this implementation working group, there is collaboration with the ACT-ERANET, which is a program that has a separate funding for CCUS, the European Energy Research Alliance, and also there is recently established what we call the project network on CCUS of the prospective demonstration projects in the EU. And actually, at the moment, you have already 11 members with this project network. The whole of this implementation working group is it's managed by a project called IPAX 9, which facilitates the functioning of this working group, and is led by the CCSA, the association in the UK, and also has members from the British Geological Survey, and also SINTEF and CO2 Valley Europe for CCU. What is also important is for the international arena is, as we all know, the mission innovation in order to accelerate the innovation, the clean energy innovation in the world. And it has created several challenges, in fact 8 challenges, in order to achieve this with global participation of the mission innovation countries. For CCUS in particular, there is a mission innovation challenge 3, in which has 20 active states, and is co-led by UK, Mexico, and Saudi Arabia. So these different countries, again, have come together, and they have produced a report out of the first workshop they had in Houston in September 2017. And now there was another workshop in Norway in June 2019, which they have produced a new report, which was just published. So it's important, this mission innovation, in order to achieve multilateral global collaboration to achieve our targets. And sometimes it's difficult to achieve that. And the ACT-ERANET, it acts as a vehicle for this cooperation with these mission innovation countries. The ACT-ERANET has several calls or proposals and has overall funding of, per call of around 40 million euros. And in the second call, it has managed to attract funding from the US of $4 million. So this is the ACT again, which, as I mentioned before, it attracts international cooperation. It's a tool to accelerate the implementation of CCS and CCU and funds research and innovation projects, and also cooperation on joint goals and knowledge sharing. So from the EU, this your project was funded out of the 2017 call, And then I just mentioned here the calls we have had, and we will have one more for 2018 to 2020. We had mainly the first three calls were on capture and conversion. And now the last calls we have for 2019 and 2020, we aim for more integrated solutions of capture, transport, and storage. This is the CCUS in industry, mainly focusing on CCS industrial applications, but of course looking at it from the safety point of view during the CO2 transport and CO2 storage. And a dedicated call for CO2 storage pilots will be in 2020, which will be published in April 2020. And the call for CCS in industry has been targeted to mission innovation countries. And then we, as I said before, we are discussing Horizon Europe. So this is the preliminary structure. The Horizon Europe has three pillars. The first pillar is more on science and basic research, and also on exchange of scientists. The second pillar dealing with global challenges, and the challenge that is more relevant to the cluster that is most relevant to this technology is mainly on the cluster 5, but also the cluster 4 on industry. It's also relevant to CCUS, but also to the geological technologies. Then the pillar 3 is mainly focused on innovation, and will create also an innovation, European Innovation Council under this pillar. So the cluster on climate, energy, and mobility, which, as I mentioned, the cluster 5, it focuses on all technologies on energy and mobility, and also on climate, and the technology that are more relevant to to your project is the energy supply area. The overall budget for this cluster, we estimate, will be around 15 billion euros. And then this is the last slide, which I want to mention what we aim to do in the future, the research and innovation policy to achieve the clean energy transition. So first of all, what we're doing now is we have almost completed the draft research and innovation plan for the Horizon Europe, and this will be discussed very soon with the member states in order to finalize this research and innovation plan, the strategic innovation plan. And then this plan, for the moment at least, of how it's proposed from the Commission, it includes CCUS and CCU, and these are addressed both in Cluster 5, but also in Cluster 4, in digital, industry, and space. And then once this is agreed by the Member States, then we'll start the preparation of the work programs for 2021 and 2022. We expect this to start by 2020, and then we will propose to the Member States whether they have ideas on this. And then we aim to do this by what we call the new buzzword is the co-creation, to have creation between the co-creation with the different clusters in order to achieve our objectives, but also creating partnerships between the private and the public in order to bring the most stakeholders together. Then we will continue. This will be in line with the Strategic Energy Technology Plan. We have the set plan conference in November in Helsinki. And we will continue in these topics of international cooperation under multilateral cooperation through mission innovation. So thank you very much, and I will be happy to reply to your questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Vassilios? Maybe I have one then. You presented the preliminary structure of the Horizon Europe program. We're obviously familiar with the current Horizon 2020 program. Could you comment on any significant differences, or will it be the same approach, philosophy?
Yeah, there will be a little bit of different philosophy because, as I mentioned before, we aim to concentrate more this time on partnerships between the public and the private. So probably that's what is proposed, at least at the moment, is to have 50% of our budget attributed to partnerships and the rest to normal calls, which you have at the moment. So that would be the main difference. But on the other hand, we aim to simplify more our programs, so it will be easier to participate in that sense. So what it concerns you, if you will still have the normal calls, so I don't think from that side will make a difference. But on the other hand, you probably have the possibility to participate, if you can, to partnerships and probably calls which will be published by the partnerships themselves.